My fiancé emptied our $40,000 wedding fund that her parents gave us for her bachelorette trip to Vegas. I sent her a single text saying have fun, then I informed her parents, changed the locks, and canceled the wedding. Now she is getting disowned and drowning in debt while I am free. I am 30 years old, and was engaged to Sarah, who is 28. We were supposed to get married in 3 months. I thought everything was perfect. We had been together for 4 years, living together for 2. Her parents, Robert and Helen, are genuinely wonderful people, salt of the earth. They were so happy for us that they gave us an incredibly generous gift, $40,000 to fund the entire wedding. Let me paint you the picture of how we got here. Sarah and I met through mutual friends at a house party 4 years ago. She was funny, ambitious, working as a marketing coordinator at a boutique downtown. I was a financial analyst at a mid-size firm, finally feeling like my career was taking off after years of grinding through entry-level position. The first 2 years were magical. We complemented each other perfectly. She was spontaneous where I was methodical. I was practical where she was creative. We moved in together after 18 months, splitting everything 50-50. She had her quirks, a love for expensive handbags, a tendency to splurge on girls' trips, but nothing that raised any red flags. Her parents Robert and Helen welcomed me into their family immediately. Robert is a retired electrician who built his own contracting business from nothing. Helen taught elementary school for 30 years before retiring. They are the kind of people who invite you over for Sunday dinner and actually mean it. They saved every penny to put Sarah through college debt-free, something she rarely acknowledged. When I proposed last year on her birthday, Robert pulled me aside afterward with tears in his eyes. He said he had never seen his daughter so happy, and that he knew I would take care of her. The weight of that trust settled on my shoulders like a warm blanket. That is when they made their incredible offer. $40,000 for the wedding. No strings attached, they said, except that we use it wisely and start our marriage without debt hanging over our heads. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. More than some people make in a year. Their only condition was that we use it responsibly to build a beautiful day and not go into debt. To keep things clean and trackable, we put the money into a new high-yield savings account. Since my credit union offered a better rate, the account was in my name, but she had a debit card linked to it specifically for wedding deposits. We would sit down together every Sunday evening, review our wedding spreadsheet, agree on vendor decisions, and she would make the payments during the week. It was a system built on trust and partnership. For months, it worked perfectly. We booked the venue, a beautiful vineyard, an hour outside the city. We hired a photographer whose work made us both cry when we saw the portfolio. We found a caterer who specialized in farm-to-table cuisine. Every decision felt collaborative, thoughtful, within budget. Sarah seemed more excited about the planning process than I had ever seen her about anything. She carried fabric swatches in her purse, showed me Pinterest boards during lunch breaks, and spent hours researching vendors. I thought this was her element, and I was happy to follow her lead while keeping an eye on the budget. But looking back now, I realized the signs were there. Small things that should have bothered me more. Like how she would get defensive when I asked to see receipts for wedding expenses. Or how she started mentioning more expensive alternatives to things we had already decided on. Or how she began talking about the wedding fund as our money instead of her parents' gift. 3 months ago, she announced she wanted to have a bachelorette party in Vegas. I thought it was a great idea. She had been working so hard on wedding planning, and she deserved to celebrate with her friends. She said it would be a long weekend, nothing crazy, just the girls letting loose before the big day. I even offered to help pay for it, but she waved me off, saying her friends were all chipping in, and it would not cost much. They were just going to share a hotel room, hit a few clubs, maybe see a show. Simple, fun, affordable. This morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. to a string of emails from my credit union. Large transaction notifications. The subject lines alone made my blood run cold. Transaction alert. Amount exceeds limit. Account activity notification. Urgent review required. My stomach lurched. The first one I opened was a charge for $18,500. The vendor was listed as Bellagio Las Vegas Resort and Casino. My mind could not process it. $18,500? For what? That was more than most people spend on a car. I thought it had to be fraud. Someone had stolen her card information. There was no way Sarah would spend that much money without talking to me first. I scrambled to log into my banking app, my hands shaking so badly I messed up my password twice. When I finally got in, the world tilted sideways. The balance that should have read something close to $40,000 now showed $15.72. It was not just one charge. It was a systematic demolition of our future. A series of large pending transactions had hit the account overnight, like financial bombs going off in sequence. $18,500 to the Bellagio Hotel and Casino, posted 2 days ago. This had to be for a penthouse suite or multiple rooms. $8,200 to win nightlife, posted yesterday. VIP table service for her entire group. $7,850 to Chanel, posted yesterday. A shopping spree that cost more than my monthly salary. $4,300 to Louis Vuitton, posted yesterday. More luxury goods that she would never be able to afford on her boutique salary. Then came the smaller charges that added insult to injury. $1,000 at a high-end steakhouse. $800 at another club. $600 at a spa day, $300 at a jewelry store. And the final kick in the teeth, a $500 cash withdrawal from a casino ATM. A total of $39,950 was gone or pending. Nearly every penny that Robert and Helen had worked decades to save and generously gifted to us had been burned through in less than 72 hours. My first reaction was not calm. It was pure, primal panic. I stumbled out of bed and dry heaved into the bathroom sink, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. My mind was a frantic storm of questions racing at light speed. Fraud? Was she kidnapped? Did someone steal her card? Was this some kind of elaborate scam? I was about to call the police, then the bank fraud line, when a notification popped up on my phone. A picture was posted in the group chat with her bridesmaids that I was included in for wedding coordination purposes. It was Sarah. My Sarah. The woman I was supposed to marry in 3 months. She was grinning from ear to ear and holding up a brand new bright pink Chanel handbag that probably cost more than most people rent. She was wearing designer sunglasses indoors, flanked by her 4 friends who were all raising champagne glasses in what looked like a toast to excess. In the background was the unmistakably opulent lobby of a Vegas hotel. All marble and gold and crystal chandeliers. Her friend Jessica had captioned it "Vegas Baby Sarah Last Hurrah" before the ball and chain with a string of money and champagne emojis. The ball and chain. That is what I was to her. Not her partner, not her future husband, not the man she claimed to love. A ball and chain. She was supposed to be at a spa weekend 2 hours away with her college roommates. A quiet, relaxing affair where they would get massages, drink wine, and reminisce about old times. That is what she had told me. That is what I had believed. The panic evaporated instantly, replaced by something that felt like ice water filling my veins. The pieces did not just click into place, they slammed together with the force of a head-on collision. The Chanel bag in the photo was probably the $7,850 charge. The hotel lobby was the $18,500 charge. The champagne they were holding was probably part of the $8,000 VIP package. This was not fraud. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, calculated choice to steal from her own parents and lie to my face about it. The shaking in my hands stopped. The nausea subsided. A strange cold clarity took over my mind like nothing I had ever experienced. I looked around our apartment with new eyes. Our photos on the wall suddenly looked like lies. The save-the-date cards stuck to the fridge now seemed like cruel jokes. The future we were supposed to build with that money, a gift from her own parents, who had worked their entire lives to save it, had been liquidated for VIP tables and luxury leather goods in a single weekend. I picked up my phone with steady hands. I scrolled to her contact. I did not scream. I did not rage. I did not type out a long, angry message about betrayal and trust, and how she had destroyed everything. I just typed 2 words, "Have fun." Then I put my phone on, "Do not disturb," and got to work. The next hour was a blur of cold, methodical efficiency. I had never felt so focused in my entire life. Every action was deliberate, every decision final. First, the locksmith. I called the emergency number and scheduled an immediate lock change for all 3 locks on our apartment door. The guy said he could be there within the hour for an additional fee. I told him to charge whatever he needed to charge and get here as fast as possible. Next, the vendors. I pulled up our wedding spreadsheet, the document we had spent months perfecting together. Every line item represented hours of research, comparison shopping, and careful planning. Now it was just a list of things to cancel. I started with the biggest deposits, the ones that would hurt the most. The venue, $10,000, non-refundable, already paid. The caterer, $5,000, non-refundable, already paid. The photographer, $3,500, already paid. The band, $2,500, already paid. The florist, $1,800, already paid. I called every single vendor and canceled everything. The conversations were brutal. Some were sympathetic when I explained there had been a family emergency. Others were coldly professional, reminding me about cancellation policies and non-refundable deposits. A few were outright hostile, especially the smaller vendors who were counting on our wedding for their monthly income. I ate the cost of every single deposit we had already paid from our personal savings. $22,800 gone in phone calls. It was a sickening financial blow that wiped out years of careful saving, but it was final. Clean eye. No loose ends. With each cancellation, I felt a strange sense of relief. Like I was surgically removing a tumor that had been growing inside our relationship, without my knowledge. Then came the hardest call of all, her parents. I stared at my phone for a full 5 minutes before dialing Helen's number. These people had welcomed me into their family. They had trusted me with their daughter and their life savings. They had spent decades working and saving to give us this gift, and now I had to tell them that their daughter had stolen it and blown it on a weekend of debauchery. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Marcus, how are my favorite lovebirds doing? Are you getting excited about the big day?" My throat closed up. I took a deep breath and forced the words out. "Helen, I have to tell you something, and there is no easy way to say it." The tone shift was immediate. "Oh no, what happened? Is Sarah okay?" "She is fine physically," I said. "But I need to tell you about the wedding fund." I explained everything, calmly, factually, like I was giving a financial report at work. I told her about the bank account, the charges, the Vegas picture. I read her the exact amounts, the vendor names, the dates and times. I could hear Robert get on the extension halfway through my explanation. There was a long, stunned silence when I finished. I could hear them breathing, processing, trying to make sense of what I had just told them. Are you absolutely sure? Helen finally whispered, her voice small and broken. Maybe her card was cloned. Maybe someone stole her information. The photo shows her holding a new Chanel bag. Helen, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. It was posted by her friend an hour ago. She's in Vegas right now, celebrating with champagne in a luxury hotel lobby. I heard a sharp intake of breath from Helen and what sounded like Robert cursing under his breath. Robert's voice came on the line, low and tight with controlled fury. Marcus, let us talk to her first. We will call you back in an hour. Just sit tight. Do not do anything rash. I told them it was too late, that I had already started canceling the wedding. There was another heavy silence. I understand, Robert said finally, his voice heavy with resignation and disappointment. We are so sorry. This is not who we raised her to be. We will handle this situation, I promise you that. The call ended, and I sat in the sudden quiet of our apartment. Our apartment. Soon to be just my apartment again. Now I am just sitting here watching the locksmith work on my door. The wedding is gone. The vendors are canceled. The woman I was going to marry in 3 months is 2,000 miles away, living it up on the ashes of our future and her parents' life savings. I have packed a small bag of her immediate essentials. Toiletries, a few changes of clothes, her laptop, some important documents. It is sitting by the front door next to the new unfamiliar locks that she will never have keys to. I feel hollow. Not angry anymore, just empty. Like someone has scooped out my insides and left me walking around as an empty shell of myself. She blew up our entire life in a single weekend, and I dismantled the rest of it in under an hour. And the worst part is, she does not even know it yet. Somewhere in Vegas, she is probably getting ready for another night of partying with money that was never hers to spend. Soon, very soon, that bubble is going to burst in the most spectacular way possible. The bomb went off exactly as I predicted, and the fallout has been absolutely biblical. It started yesterday afternoon. My phone, which had been blissfully quiet since I put it on Do Not Disturb, suddenly erupted in a tsunami of texts and missed calls from Sarah and her friends. I watched the notifications pile up like digital debris from an explosion. The messages started confused and escalated to frantic within hours. What the hell, Marcus, my key is not working. Did you change the locks as some kind of joke? This is not funny. Whoa. Are you seriously giving me the silent treatment right now? I am standing outside our apartment in the rain. Pick up your damn phone. You childish jerk. I know you can see these messages. Whatever game you are playing, it stops now. Open the door. My card got declined for a coffee at the airport, and I had to borrow money from Jessica for the taxi here. You better have a good explanation for this. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. Not a single "I am sorry" or "we need to talk," or "I can explain everything." Just pure rage that her key did not work and her access to the money she had already stolen was suddenly cut off. The irony of being mad about a declined coffee after dropping $40,000 on a weekend of excess was apparently completely lost on her. I did not reply to a single message. I just watched them pile up like evidence in a case I was building against her character. Then came the banging on the door. It started as polite knocking, then escalated to full-fisted pounding that echoed through the entire apartment. It went on for 20 minutes straight before she finally gave up. I heard her on the phone in the hallway, her voice rising and falling in dramatic sobs as she called her friends for sympathy and backup. The real fireworks started when her parents arrived. I got a text from Robert at 4 p.m. We are 5 minutes out. Is she still there? I told them she was somewhere in the building, probably in the lobby harassing the front desk staff to let her into an apartment she no longer had any right to access. They pulled up just as Sarah was gearing up for another round of screaming at my door. I watched the whole scene unfold from the peephole like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Helen got out of the passenger seat, her face like carved stone. I had never seen her look anything but warm and welcoming, but now she looked like a woman who had discovered her daughter was a stranger. Robert looked, he had aged 10 years since our phone call. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray with disappointment and exhaustion. Sarah, get in the car, Robert said, his voice dangerously calm in the way that fathers get when they are barely holding back volcanic rage. Dad? What are you doing here? Sarah's voice was suddenly small and confused. Marcus locked me out. He changed the locks. He is having some kind of breakdown or something. He is being a total psycho. He did not have to lock you out, Helen said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. We saw the bank statement, Sarah. We saw everything. The hotel bill. The shopping sprees. The VIP tables. We saw it all. I watched through the peephole as the color drained from Sarah's face like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened and closed without making any sound. It was a mistake, she finally managed to say. The trip got a little out of hand. You know how Vegas is. It is just money. We can pay it back. I will get a better job. I will work overtime. We can fix this. With what money, Sarah? Robert snapped, his voice cracking with emotion. Your job at the boutique that pays $12 an hour? Why? That might cover the interest on what you spent in about, 200 years. We gave you that money for a wedding, for a future, for a start to your married life. and you spat in our faces. You spat in his face. He gestured toward my door. Now get in the car before you embarrass yourself and us any further. She got in the car without another word. It was the first time I had ever seen her look truly small, truly defeated. As they drove away, I felt something I had not expected. Pity. Not for her, but for Robert and Helen, who had just discovered that the daughter they raised and loved was capable of this level of selfishness and deception. About an hour later, Robert called me. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and shame. Marcus, I want to apologize to you on behalf of our family. What Sarah did is unforgivable. We raised her better than this, or at least we thought we did. He told me they had spent the last hour getting the full story out of her. Her version of events was that she deserved a nice trip after all the stress of wedding planning. That everyone has bachelor and bachelorette parties, and hers just happened to be more expensive than most. She genuinely believed that she was entitled to spend the money however she wanted, and that me and her parents were overreacting to what she called a harmless splurge. She could not or would not understand that she had stolen from her own parents and destroyed our relationship in the process. Robert told me they had laid out new terms for her life, effective immediately. She would move back into their basement. She would get a second job to supplement her boutique income. Every single penny she earned that was not for absolute bare necessities would go directly to them until every cent of the $40,000 was repaid. They had taken her car keys, her credit cards, and her independence. It would take her approximately 15 years to pay them back at her current salary, assuming she never spent money on anything but food and basic clothing. Then came the social media smear campaign. Led by Jessica, Sarah Friend Group launched a coordinated attack on my character across every platform they could find. It started with a long, vague Instagram story about escaping controlling relationships and how sometimes you need to celebrate your freedom, even if small-minded people do not understand it. The story painted Sarah as a victim of my financial abuse, a woman who had finally broken free from a man who monitored her every purchase and controlled her access to money. It was a masterpiece of manipulation that turned her theft into my oppression and her lies into my psychological violence. My DMs became a cesspool of messages from their friends and followers, calling me every name in the book. Controlling, abusive, manipulative, financial terrorist. The messages were vicious, personal, and completely detached from reality. It is weird how none of it bothered me. I read every message with the same detached curiosity I might feel watching a nature documentary about predators. These people did not know me, did not know the situation, and were basing their outrage on a carefully crafted narrative designed to absolve Sarah of responsibility for her actions. I spent the next day boxing up the rest of her belongings. Every item was a ghost of the life we had planned together. The dress she had bought for the rehearsal dinner, still in its garment bag with the tags attached. The stupid future Mrs. Wilson coffee mug that her co-workers had given her as an engagement gift. The wedding planning binders we had spent months perfecting together. I did not get sad. I did not get nostalgic. I just felt detached, like I was packing up the belongings of a stranger who had briefly lived in my space. I packed everything carefully, respectfully, completely. 32 boxes in total, stacked against the wall like cardboard tombstones for our dead relationship. Robert came the next day with a moving truck and 2 of his contractor friends. The process was silent and efficient. No one made eye contact. No one tried to make small talk. We just loaded box after box until the apartment was scrubbed clean of any evidence that she had ever lived there. Before he left, Robert pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. It was a cashier's check for $18,500. Marcus, he said, his voice thick with emotion, we will make this right with you on the deposits. I give you my word. This covers most of what you lost on the vendors. It might take me a few more weeks to get the rest together, but you will not lose a penny because of what our daughter did. I appreciated that gesture more than any amount of money. It was not about the cash. It was about taking responsibility, about trying to repair damage that could never really be fixed. I thought that would be the end of it. Clean break, lesson learned, everyone moves on with their lives. I was wrong. The last 2 weeks have been an education in just how deep entitlement runs when it is enabled by a pack of fools with law degrees. Sarah's first move, almost certainly coached by Jessica, was to try and force her way back into the apartment through legal intimidation. I got a knock on my door on a Tuesday morning. It was a police officer, looking official and slightly annoyed. Sarah was standing behind him, trying her best to look like a damsel in distress who had been wrongfully locked out of her own home. Her story, delivered with practiced tears and carefully chosen words, was that I had suffered some kind of psychological break. That I had suddenly and without warning locked her out of our shared apartment, stolen her belongings, and was now holding her property hostage. She was scared, she told the officer. Scared of what I might do next. Scared of what I might have already done to her things. My calm, methodical approach to the whole situation paid off in that moment. I invited the officer inside and showed him everything he needed to see. The lease, with only my name on it. The bank statements printed out and highlighted, showing the Vegas charges in black and white. The Instagram photos from her trip, showing her celebrating with luxury goods that cost more than most people's annual salary. The officer's face went from neutral professional interest to barely disguised annoyance as he realized he had been dragged into a domestic dispute by someone trying to use the police as her personal debt collection service. Ma'am, he said to Sarah, his voice flat and tired, This is clearly a domestic dispute, not a criminal matter. You need to handle this through civil channels, not emergency police services. I strongly suggest you contact a lawyer if you believe you have a legal claim to any property in this apartment. Sarah's face crumpled as her performance fell apart. The helpless victim act dissolved, leaving behind a woman who had just realized that authority figures were not going to automatically take her side. When the legal intimidation failed, they escalated to actual legal threats. Jessica's father, who apparently is some kind of lawyer, sent me a formal demand letter that was craftier and more dangerous than I had expected. It did not mention the stolen money directly, probably because that would have been admitting to a crime. Instead, it made a pseudo-legal argument about domestic partnerships and emotional damages. The letter claimed that because Sarah and I were engaged and had been cohabitating for 2 years, we had formed a domestic partnership under state law.g. It alleged that I had summarily and cruelly terminated this partnership without proper notice or consideration for her financial well-being. It demanded a one-time settlement of $50,000 to compensate her for the emotional trauma of our breakup and to help her re-establish her independent life. It was a naked cash grab disguised in legal language, a shakedown attempt that relied on the hope that I would be too intimidated or too tired to fight back. This was her checkmate move, or so she thought. Pay up or face a long, expensive legal battle that would cost more than the settlement. I forwarded the letter to Robert without adding any commentary. He called me within 10 minutes, his voice tight with fury and embarrassment. "Marcus, I swear on my mother grave that I had no idea this was coming. This is Jessica's father doing this, not us. He is what they call an ambulance chaser, the kind of lawyer who advertises on bus benches and late-night television. We would never, ever support something like this." This is where my own approach to revenge became more active and aggressive. Up until this point, I had been reactive, responding to her moves, cleaning up her messes. But now I was done being defensive. I wanted this finished, permanently, with no possibility of future harassment or legal threats. I drafted an email to her lawyer that was polite, professional, and absolutely brutal in its thoroughness. I spent 3 hours researching case law, gathering evidence, and crafting language that would end this nonsense once and for all. Subject: response to demand letter on behalf of Sarah Wilson. Case closed. Dear Mr. Johnson, I am in receipt of your demand letter dated last Tuesday regarding your client alleged domestic partnership claim. Your client demand for $50,000 has been reviewed and is hereby rejected in its entirety. However, since you seem to be operating under several fundamental misunderstandings about the facts of this case, please allow me to clarify the situation for you. Attached to this email, you will find the following documentation. First, complete bank statements showing your client unauthorized expenditure of $39,950 from a wedding fund that was gifted to us by her parents specifically for wedding expenses. Second, a sworn and notarized affidavit from her parents, Robert and Helen Wilson, confirming that the money was a gift intended solely for wedding expenses, that your client had no legal claim to the funds, and that they are now holding her financially responsible for repaying the entire amount. Third, screenshots of social media posts where your client and her associates openly brag about their extravagant spending spree in Las Vegas using money that did not belong to them. Your client alleged emotional and financial distress was not caused by my actions, but by the predictable consequences of her own fraudulent behavior. The only party in this situation who has suffered genuine financial damages is myself, through the loss of non-refundable wedding deposits totaling over $20,000. Her parents have graciously compensated me for these losses, demonstrating the kind of personal responsibility that your client apparently lacks. Any attempt to pursue this frivolous claim will be met with an immediate countersuit for harassment, extortion, and abuse of process. Furthermore, I will be filing a formal complaint against you with the State Bar Association for knowingly pursuing a meritless case based on fraudulent representations. I am confident that the disciplinary board will be very interested to learn how you advised your client to proceed after being presented with clear evidence of her theft. I am also copying this correspondence to the District Attorney Office, as your client actions may constitute criminal fraud under state law. I have been advised by my own counsel that her unauthorized use of funds, specifically designated for wedding expenses, could be prosecuted as theft by deception, particularly given the substantial amount involved and the clear intent to deceive. This matter is now permanently closed. Any further contact from you or your client will be considered harassment and will be reported to the appropriate authorities. I copied Robert on the email and sent it off. The response was immediate and telling. Absolute silence. No angry phone calls, no threatening follow-up letters, no escalation of any kind. Just the deafening quiet of people who had been caught red-handed and knew it. Robert called me the next day to tell me that he had received a very direct phone call from Jessica's father, who had suddenly discovered a conflict of interest that prevented him from representing Sarah any longer. The legal threat had collapsed as quickly as it had appeared. 6 months have passed since that morning when I woke up to find our future stolen and liquidated for a weekend of excess. I am writing this final update because people have been asking for closure, and I think I finally have enough perspective to provide it. The silence from Sarah and her enablers has been absolute and permanent. My number remains blocked. The social media smear campaign died a quiet death when their attacks failed to generate any response from me. Apparently, it is not much fun trying to burn down the life of someone who refuses to acknowledge that there is a fire. I got the full story of Sarah's downward spiral in bits and pieces from Robert, who still calls me once a month to check in and apologize for raising someone capable of such betrayal. The updates read like a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement meets reality. The friendship with Jessica ended in a screaming match about who was to blame for the legal failure. Each blamed the other for encouraging the worst impulses that led to this disaster. Sarah's parents held firm on their new rules despite her tantrums and manipulation attempts. She lasted exactly 2 months in their basement before the restrictions became unbearable. No car meant she had to take public transportation to her retail job. The strict budget meant no designer clothes, no expensive dinners, no spa days. The second job, at a local diner, meant working nights and weekends, coming home exhausted and smelling like grease. She finally stormed out after a fight about money, declaring that she would rather be independent and poor than live under their oppressive rules. She moved in with 2 roommates, in a cramped apartment, an hour away from the city, working as a waitress and drowning in credit card debt from trying to maintain a lifestyle her income could never support. Robert tells me she has made zero effort to pay them back even a single dollar. Their relationship is, in his words, functionally non-existent. They have not formally disowned her, but they have emotionally detached from the person she became. It is a quiet, ongoing tragedy that breaks my heart for them. And me? I am doing better than I ever imagined possible. I took the $18,500 that Robert insisted on giving me, combined it with the money I had saved for our honeymoon, and disappeared for 6 weeks of solo travel across Europe. It was exactly the reset I needed. Those weeks of solitude, exploration, and reflection washed away the last residue of bitterness and replaced it with something better: perspective. The real revenge, I learned, is not some elaborate scheme or public humiliation. It is simply living well. It is the peace that comes from knowing you acted with integrity when someone else chose deception. It is the financial stability that comes from making responsible choices. It is the quiet satisfaction of watching your life move forward while someone else's life implodes under the weight of their own poor decisions. I did not have to destroy Sarah. She handled that entirely on her own. I just refused to let her destruction take me down with her. I did have one final surreal encounter last week that brought everything full circle. I was at a coffee shop downtown, reading and enjoying the kind of peaceful Saturday morning that had become my new normal, when she walked in. She did not see me sitting in the corner booth. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than just needing sleep. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, worn-out jacket and jeans that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she moved through the space like someone who was just trying to get through another day. She ordered a black coffee, nothing fancy, and fumbled with crumpled bills from her pocket to pay for it. The barista had to wait while she counted out exact change, including nickels and dimes. Watching her, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a faint, distant pity for someone who had traded everything solid and real in her life for a weekend of artificial glamour that was now just a memory on her phone. She was not a monster. She was not some irredeemable villain from a movie. She was just a woman who had made a series of spectacularly selfish choices and was now living with the mundane, grinding consequences of those choices every single day. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked out without looking back. There was nothing to say, nothing to resolve, nothing to rehash. That chapter of my life was closed, and I was completely at peace with how it had ended. I still keep one artifact from that whole mess tucked away in my filing cabinet at home. It is the original bank statement from the morning I discovered the theft. I do not look at it often, but when I do, it tells a complete story in numbers. It shows the $40,000 deposit from Robert and Helen, a monument to their generosity and hope for our future. And right below it, itemized with brutal clarity, is the record of how that hope was systematically destroyed. The Bellagio, Wynn Nightlife, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and all the rest. It is a reminder that character is revealed not in what people say or promise, but in what they do when they think nobody is watching and there will be no consequences. It is a reminder that sometimes the most satisfying justice is not dramatic or immediate, but quiet and mathematical, spelled out in the cold, hard numbers of a bank statement. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Someone you thought you knew? Share your stories in the comments below, because I know I am not alone in learning this lesson the hard way. Sometimes the most important realization is that actions have consequences, and the people who claim to love you the most can disappoint you the deepest. But on the other side of that disappointment is something valuable: the knowledge that you can survive anything, and the freedom that comes from refusing to enable someone else's destructive choices. Hit that like button if you believe that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Subscribe for more stories about people who thought they could get away with anything until reality came knocking. Remember, character is revealed not in what people say they will do, but in what they actually do when they think nobody is watching. The moment I chose my self-respect over someone who had none, I finally started living again. And if you are in a similar situation, trapped by someone who mistakes your kindness for weakness, know this: you have more power than you think. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's destruction of your life and the lives of people who care about them. Thanks for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that the best revenge is always living well.